Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome
Hi there.
to Qatsyr Harvest. This is episode 41. I'm looking at our screen and, well, nope, I have the wrong show. So I need to go back and start all over again and see if I can bring up the correct show so I at least can see you guys. Otherwise, I'll be missing our interaction. Just one moment and I'll be right with you. There we are. Okay. I clicked the wrong one, and there we have Wookie, and we have a Shabbat Shalom from the Wook, from our producer. Hi, Kevin. Hello, Kirk. How are you?
Good.
Yep. As you can see, the Wookie is definitely styling on this show. He'll turn around and come back into camera view. There is no competing with the Wook. That is for darn sure. All right, so we are Qatsyr Harvest, episode 41. We have transitioned out of our rebuttal to the Christian New Testament. That was highly entertaining with their absolutely
stupid.
Stupid. That's a good word. Stupid. Stupid. Ripoff of Shabuah as if it were Pentecost, and it was kind of fun to go over because it was so ridiculous. But what it's done is it's brought us back into two prophets which speak vociferously of the conditions, the people, the timing, and the events pursuant to these final harvests. So that's where we are. And in the previous program, which was earlier today, I went through and spoke of the introduction, really, through Hosea, of what we are to expect today, what God has to say about his people. And my guess is you guys had a chance to listen to some of that. And boy, God is not impressed with Israel. Yeah, I mean, so Ephraim is perceived as that which is associated with religious maladies and sickness. And Yahudah is an oozing and pestilent wound. That's probably not a compliment.
No.
And he says, and then both prophetically of what would happen really within just a few decades of this time, and then again now, it's telling Israel that, running off to Asher is not going to work for you. And they were hauled off to Asher, and that is where they remained. It's where they would later write the Babylonian Talmud. It's where they made the Quran appear religious by selling Muhammad Talmud stories. And so that worked out really poorly for them. And now they're fixated on taking out and bombing into oblivion Asher, and as in Arabia, trying to thwart the Iranian nuclear program. But that isn't going to work out either, because there was a time when it could be done, but it can't be done now, not sensibly. And the reason I say that is that while I would love to see the Iranian nuclear program taken out, while there's this proxy war going on against Russia, it has created this very tight alliance between Russia, China, and Ukraine. And you combine that with Trump's upping on sanctions against Russia and rearming Ukraine to fight and kill more Russians, with this huge tariff that he has leveled on China. Boy, it puts the United States in an exceedingly vulnerable position. And the consequence of trying to support Israel in this regard will be catastrophic. So this is not a good position for the world to be in, and that's why I rebuked this notion prophetically that going after Asher is not going to be a cure, but as Yahweh said, it's going to further ensnare you. And then God says, as a result, I will be akin to a roaring lion to Ephraim, and like a conciliatory lion approaching the family of Yehudah, I myself will tear up and tear apart, and then I will walk away and in some cases lift up such that nothing will rescue or nothing will be left to be rescued or snatched away. So this is rough language, and I can assure you, yeah, it was not anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
That's a given.
So this isn't a pejorative in the sense of trying to slander his people inappropriately. This is his evaluation of them, and he wants them to know that, because if you don't know it, then how in the world is Israel going to survive what's coming? And I think it's also an interesting play on words, because there is an example here where similar things convey a vastly different outcome. So looking at Ephraim, the shakal, the lion, is roaring, and with it, God is posed to tear Yisrael apart. It is Towrah ripping the nation, and then Halak walking away. And as for Yisrael, there would be an Ein Natzel, no rescue anytime soon. But by contrast with Yahudah, the Kafir lion is conciliatory and ready to make amends. And we know this because Kafir is from Kafar, which is to reconcile, serving as the basis of Yom Kippurim and the Day of Reconciliations. Then as we approach the time, or the same verbal chain, as I should say, we discover that Yahweh will Ane personally tear his beloved from Ephraim, separating them from harm's way, while Towrah providing whatever they require. So rather than Halak walk away, Yahweh will Nashah lift them up and carry Yehudah home. And as a result, and that's still, no one will ever be able to take them away again. And while this sounds really encouraging in contrast to what preceded it, especially, well, there would be 27 centuries between the infection and the cure. This suggests that God is addressing the ultimate and promised result of the Shabbat and Teruah harvest and the Kippurim homecoming. So what follows is among the most profoundly important statements I think ever spoken by God, especially when we consider the implications, although there would be a lot of statements that you could stack up there as most profoundly important. This is God speaking in first person through his prophet. I will go away and return to my place until they closely examine and carefully consider the way to receive the benefits of the relationship through the restoring witness of the eternal testimony. And they seek my presence responsibly, investigating the time to learn about my impending appearance. It is during the time of troubles that they will approach by earnestly seeking me, longing to learn about the relationship. Hosea 5:15. Well, fellas, this one is this is tough medicine, but it's also exceedingly important for who we are and what we're doing today and who we're doing it with.
Yes.
Yahweh divorced Israel 2,700 years ago. And in that period of time, he only found 3 prophets that would listen to him and speak for him. After Hosea, you have Zechariah, Yoel, and Malachi. That's it. And from that point, nothing for 2,500 years. That's a long time to go away. Now, Yahweh, even in his return, this can speak of really a process, because Yahweh says he's not going to return until they examine and carefully consider the benefits of the relationship along with the restoring witness, and that they seek his presence by investigating and learning about his appearance. Well, they're not going to go from Malachi, which was the last God spoke to them, where you can be assured that when we read Hosea, Yirmiah, Yashaya, Zechariah, and Yoel, and then Malachi, that there was no change in God's people. They remained every bit as recalcitrant, as embittered, as rebellious as they had always been. There was no turning away from religion. There was no turning away from politics. There was no turning back to Yahweh. There was no time in all of that period where they said, it's really a shame we should have not erased Yahweh's name. Let's re-include it in our in all of our documents and our witness and in our daily lives. That did not occur. There was no point where they said, boy, we have really blown it on Dode, our Messiah and King, and we need to give him credit for fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. There was no, well, let's stop being religious and let's return to the proper attendance and understanding of the Moed Mikre. That didn't occur. Yeah. I don't think there's anything that occurred in the 2,500 years that gave Yahweh any hope that any of them were going to closely examine and carefully consider the way to receive the benefits of this relationship by way of a restoring witness. Except one thing. Yahweh can see past the present and into the future. Mm-hmm. And he had already made the determination that there would be an ad, and that the ad would be shamar, observant, regarding the Asher. And so he, in these words, actually predicted what we're doing to resolve this problem. And this is the thing that finally put me kind of over the hurdle of why would God have made such a big deal about the role we're playing? Because there's hundreds and hundreds of prophecies regarding it, and a score of different titles and designations regarding this role. Ad happens to be one of them. And so why would God make such a big deal out of it? He says more about this than almost anything in the Torah and prophets. And the answer is that without what we're doing, he can't return. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm not returning until you start paying attention to, closely examine, and carefully consider the means to the relationship through a restoring witness. So he can't return unless there is a restoring witness. And he comes to appreciate Asher by way of Shamar.
Asher. Mm-hmm.
And that's what is being said here.
First word I ever looked up was Shamar.
Yeah, Shamar. Closely examine, carefully consider, observe.
Yeah.
So the answer here is that God would still be estranged from his people if he weren't reaching out to them through us. This is the whole purpose of the restoring witness to the eternal testimony. This is why Asher was the first word we translated.
Mm-hmm.
and came to understand the benefits of the relationship. It is why our entire mission is defined by Shamar. Yahowah has gone away, but he has returned by way of the restoring witness who closely examines and carefully considers the means to receive the benefits of the relationship. And this is what is causing his people to seek Yahweh's presence. This is the means to responsibly investigating and learning about God's return. And that is why there's these 35 books behind me on the shelf. That is why there are now 250 of the YAHOWAH blogs. That is why we reach out on all manner of social media. That's why we're doing Family Hour tonight. You are witnessing Yahweh's return, at least the pretext to his return, through this program. And the reason it's so essential is that those who were empowered politically and religiously in Israel, who Yahweh has excoriated through this whole diatribe, this whole narrative in Hosea, have precluded God's people from knowing Yahweh, from acknowledging his name, from accepting that his son is Dod, and that he is the Messiah, the returning King and our Savior, even understanding the nature and the conditions and the benefits of the Bereth covenant, knowing what it actually means to be observant. None of this was going to change if God didn't intervene in this way. And then he is saying that even with this intervention, and we've been at it now for 24 years, that even with this intervention, with the restoring witness who was observant, particularly about the benefits of the relationship, it is only during the time of trouble that Israel will finally approach by earnestly seeking Yahweh, striving to learn about him. It's going to take trauma for this to finally materialize. It is the time of trouble that's going to where it's going to be understood, appreciated, listened to, acknowledged, where it's going to resonate with God's people. And I spend a lot of time in social media now trying to herald the message, trying to get Israel's attention. I spoke a little bit about it this morning on the prelude to this program, and to say, just how frustrating that is, because Israel is really recalcitrant. They are exceedingly hard-headed. And they've moved into what I would call insanity mode, where they're continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result. This idea that they're going to prevail and secure the nation by obliterating Hamas and turning Gaza into a demolition site. I've seen some of the pictures today as to what happened, and oh my God! And I understand that the Muslims are hiding among their children and their women, and they hide in schools and hospitals, and the only way for Israel to take out those who perpetrated the October 7th massacre is to bomb them where they are, surrounded by their women and children and inside of hospitals and schools. But oh my, is it a bad look. I mean, the BBC is having a field day showing pictures of how Israel bombed a school, bombed a hospital, and all of the dying and mutilated children. And while two of the people they took out today, good riddance, one was the Minister of Finance for Hamas, which means he was the recipient of great bribes from all around the world, Qatar and the EU, even the United States, the United Nations. And the other was the Muslim, not a Hamas member, but the Muslim that was most responsible for kidnapping the mother and 2 children who he later strangled. He was exterminated today. Well, killing him is small justice. But Israel is turning the entire world against them. The consequence of what they're doing, for nothing, because they're making more terrorists than they're killing, while they are angering the world to the point that they're going to be completely isolated. I mean, who would have thought, fellas, that the world would go into a period where throughout academia and throughout the mainstream media, that Israel, immediately after being abused in a more diabolical way than has happened to any people in the last 100 years, that Israel would be blamed, that the world would condemn Israel for responding to and trying to stop their own annihilation.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that's what we witnessed. And then who would have thought that it would be possible one day to a next to ignite a planet-wide trade war? To have the Trumpster come out with his charts and say, everybody gets a duty. And it's just such a changed world from what it previously was, and it's going to devolve into open hunting season on Jews. Mm-hmm. There was an article that I responded to today where they were showing that anti-Semitism in Ireland, particularly among Roman Catholics there,
Mm-hmm.
has reached a level that is equivalent to what it was in the medieval period when the Roman Catholic Church tortured Jews with wanton impunity. And there's not a lot of people that recognize the Christian New Testament is grossly anti-Semitic and demonizes Jews because the Gentiles were desirous of replacing them. And therefore they had to demonize them to make that seem credible. But here we are. We are in a time of sorrow, of deepening troubles for Israel that it's going to be tough to survive as a Jew, whether it's in America or Europe or in Israel. It's going to be tough to survive. And you don't have anyone that is really rallying to protect them from Islam, protect them from Christianity, protect them from progressives.
They're not even rallying amongst themselves.
Well, they are. See the protests they are, Kevin, but only in the manner that you're speaking of here. They're rallying and protesting against their government. They're rallying and protesting against the military. They're rallying and protesting against the religious. The religious says, no, hell no, we won't fight. We won't even enlist.
Yeah.
And the progressives say, hell no, it wasn't the Muslims that caused all of the hell in Israel. It was our government. So we want to punish the government. They're protesting, all right, but they're tearing themselves apart.
Yeah.
And so this is what God is saying. It's going to get so bad in Israel. I mean, there was what a nasty bit today. Today was really a rough day for Israel. The BBC, which is probably the largest news purveyor in Europe, was running story after story on how the IDF was bombing hospitals and schools and showing the mutilated bodies of children. And not mentioning that the Muslims were using these places to hide, and it's way too costly for Jews to go in as soldiers to take them out. because they put themselves at great risk. And the only way to take them out really safely is to bomb the facilities, and then the collateral damage is high, although really is it collateral damage, or are they all equally guilty? And then on top of that, they go down to a zero level on U.S. Import duties, and with a zero duty on all imported goods from the United States, they're still hit with a massive duty by the Trump administration. And then you had Roseanne Barr of the Shin Bet writing a letter to the super liberal judiciary in Israel, saying that the only reason he was fired, not because he was incompetent and had every reason to know that 10/7 was going to happen. In fact, he had a file that was called Alaska Flood and knew exactly the name of it and every aspect of it and who was sponsoring it and how they were going to come into Israel, and did nothing about it. And when he heard that it was happening at 6:30 in the morning, he went back to bed, didn't even bother calling Netanyahu. And yet he is complaining and saying the only reason I'm being fired is because, well, Netanyahu doesn't like the graft trial that's against him and wanted me to interfere in that graft trial. It just really disgusting stuff. So if the man harbored that kind of thoughts, why would a prime minister want him serving in his government? But to air that kind of dirty language in Israel, God's people are mutually destructive. So here is Yahowah bemoaning that, saying essentially what we're saying. My people are impossible. I can't resonate. I can't reason with them. They're hard-headed. They're irascible. They're opinionated. They're religious. They're political. They're wrong about everything, and they've been wrong forever. So I'm just going to say adios, and I'm going to my my home in the seventh dimension. See you later. And then Yahowah, with a sense of humor, says, but then I'm going to send my messenger. I'm going to send the restoring witness. He's going to have to deal with him. And after he softens him up a bit, then I'll come back. It's kind of funny when you think about it. You had the children of Israel during the Exodus tell God when he came down to speak to them that shut up and go away. We never want to see you or hear from you again. And so God said, "Yeah, I got no problem with that. You guys are miserable to be around anyway. I'm going to speak through people." And then in the end, after they are really obnoxious to him and about him, and he says, treating him like he's a fungus, I'm gonna send my guy off on the beach.
My guy.
Yeah, my guy. Oh well, take that guy. Thanks, Yah. Appreciate it. He won't listen to you, so you send me after him. Okay. What he's basically saying, that doesn't work any better. But it finally gets so bad for Jews that they have no one else to turn to, and therefore our message will finally resonate. So Yahowah revealed very clearly that after divorcing Yisrael for religious infidelity, which is what he did, that's why he had Hosea marry the temple whore, the religious whore, and Gomer, that he was going to back away and allow his beloved to do as they have chosen, which was to fend for themselves, to be religious and political. And having previously come to the rescue, having devoted himself to guiding and teaching and protecting them, God chose not to compete with their political and their religious yearnings. He left them to their own devices. And quite frankly, it didn't turn out very well. Over the intervening millennia, the Israelites were bludgeoned by, well, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Macedonian Greeks, the Romans, and not the Romans just once. You had Pompey as the first time. They invited him in because they were squabbling. Remember the two brothers that were
Yeah.
squabbling over who was going to be high
Who's gonna
priest
be
and
high
who was going to
priest?
be king, and the king gig didn't pay as well as the religious gig, so they both wanted to be high priest and neither wanted to be king. So tells you about the nature of Israel, doesn't it? So that was the Pompey intervention. That didn't go very well. Then you had Nero deciding to send Vespasian and his son Titus to go quell a rebellion that the Romans, of course, started by stealing from the temple. But that did not go very well, and mainly because the Jews were divided among themselves. Which makes the whole Christian New Testament so absurd, because they have the Jews speak with one voice and be plotting as a cohesive unit, all Jews to kill the Christian God. And yeah, they speak with one voice, they act with one voice, and yet it was the very fact that they were a house divided that brought Rome in for the second time and caused Israel's defeat.
Good
And
point.
if that were not bad enough, then you had the curse of Hadrian, where he comes in 133 to confront the father of rabbinic Judaism. That's not a good sign either, and his false messiah, Bar Kokhba. So we had 3 attacks by the Romans, and where were we? Oh, then we have the Roman Catholics. Oh boy, they were miserable to Jews. Then we have Muhammad's Muslims. Well, they wiped out 1/3 of the Earth's population in the first 100 years of Islam. Then you had, and probably good that there weren't a lot of Jews at the time in Judea. Mostly had been hauled off into captivity throughout Europe, because where they were in Europe was mostly out of reach of the Muslims at the time. That was a favor, I guess. Then you had, after Muhammad's Muslims, you had the Ottomans, and the Ottomans were essentially a blend of the Mongols, who were really savage raiders, with the religion of Islam. You combined Mongolian raiders and Islam, you got the what was the Ottoman Turkish Empire. They were miserable to Jews. And then you had the Crusaders, and I'm not sure they were any better than the Ottomans. They hated Jews too, of course. And then you had the European Christians, and all of the pogroms, and what a horrible period that was. And then we had the conspiratorialists who demonized Jews all throughout Europe. Then you had the tragic uprisings against Jews in the Ukraine. This was followed by the Nazis, who tried to impersonate the Ukrainians, and collectively with the Muslims, they perpetrated the Holocaust. Then you have the communists, who treated Jews horribly. Then you have the Muslims again, and now you have this final generation of irrational progressives leaguing with the Muslims to annihilate Israel. So it's really been a rough ride, and it's getting rougher. And one would have thought that after a litany of abuse like this, there might have been some Jew somewhere who thought, well, since our approach has resulted in centuries of demonization, we might want to flip back through the pages to find something that led to a better outcome. Don't you think somebody would have read about Dode or Hezekiah? I mean, I think I would have done that.
Yeah, the book's been there the whole time. They read it.
Right.
Yes. I mean,
look what happened when they did. I mean,
right.
Hezekiah, there were 185,000
Assyria,
troops, which is a whole lot more than the 4,000 or 5,000 Muslims that invaded on 10/7, right?
Mm-hmm.
185,000, and they were
really
armed, as an army, as opposed to jihadists on foot. And 185,000 of them, and there was no IDF.
Yeah,
I wasn't in the IDF on October 7th either, but that's another matter. And all Hezekiah had to do was celebrate Pesach, Matzah and Bikurim. Speaking of Pesach, we do have a choice, gentlemen. We can celebrate Pesach a week from tonight. And it can be part of this program. We can celebrate Pesach a week from tonight. We celebrate Matzah on going through Saturday into Saturday evening, and then we celebrate Bikurim on the first day of the week, which is how Dode celebrated these 3 days in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, which seems kind of neat to me. The only negative from my personal point of view is that the sun has now set here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and so we would have to wait to after the show for us to do our Passover meal, unless it's going to be right close to this time. We could actually bring a little Passover to the show and have a eat and podcast, which might also work pretty well, but to do so, we are right at the cusp, at the maximum extreme of astronomical. Technically, there is a renewing of the sun's light, such that Abib, the 14th of Abib, could be celebrated on Friday evening. So it's technically permissible. Normally, from an observational point of view, you'd say, okay, the next day.
Right.
So what do you think?
Yes.
Yahowah, by the way, Yahowah does not care. And so long as you understand what Passover represents, which we do, how it was fulfilled, when it was fulfilled, what it delivers, how it's incorporated into matzah, the fact that you celebrate it with justification on Friday versus Saturday is not a concern to Yahowah. And quite frankly, I don't know about you guys, but our matzah celebration would look looks a lot like Passover.
Right.
It's kind of a dual Passover. And so you could extend the entire week one extra day to an 8th day and have 2 Passovers like Hezekiah did. Worked pretty well for Hezekiah.
Right.
I don't have 185,000 Assyrians out my window. But if I did,
a lot of lizards.
But if I did, the dual celebrations of Passover would work quite well. Although with Yahowah, the single celebration of Passover, all Hezekiah had to do was read the Torah, get rid of all the religious symbols and worship in Israel, and celebrate Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, and the Assyrians were gone. One malach, adios. They just chose to celebrate the second one because, well, I guess they were so appreciative.
They had a great time. They're like,
had a great time. This all worked really well. So anyway, my sense is from seeing you guys, listening to you guys, that your preference would be that we celebrate Pesach with this show next week at this time.
I'm okay with anything. Absolutely. My only thing is that there's a lot of shows on TV about cooking, not a lot of shows about people eating. So,
a new trend.
So I don't know how that's going to play out, but we could round table around bites.
I have room on my table here.
Maybe.
I have plenty of room here. We might even get to see
Miss Sylvia will be back there.
Miss Leah serve her Pesach meal.
Right.
I'm leaning towards it, so it might be just a small taster meal during the show and a more robust celebration of Pesach thereafter. Pesach is my favorite night of the year, so I certainly don't want to cheat the experience, but I think sharing the experience will work out just fine.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that will be our plan. Now, speaking of Hezekiah, had Israelites done so at any time during this long onslaught, had they chosen the same approach that he did. And he actually was a contemporary of Hosea. Upon rediscovering the Torah scroll, he did as Yahweh had asked. He removed all traces of religion from Judah. Then he and his fellow Yehudim celebrated the Mikra of Chag Matzah, not once, but twice. And as a result, the 185,000 Assyrian soldiers camped outside Jerusalem, the best equipped and trained militia on the planet, all died without firing a shot. That was 50 times the number of trained soldiers than the rampaging Mujahideen, who successfully invaded Israel on 10/7/23. So, when it comes to intelligence, Yahweh's better informed, more vigilant, better equipped, and more capable than the IDF. Just thought I would share that with you. If you're a Israelite, Yahweh is better informed, more vigilant, better equipped, and more capable than the IDF. And in his case, there was no investment in bullets, didn't have to beg the United States for bombs. There weren't any expensive interceptors, nor was there any spilt blood of sons and daughters.
Wow.
Yeah, God's really good at this protection thing. I mean, as you know, I wrote a exceedingly effective condemnation of Islam, both in Tea with Terrorists and Prophet of Doom 23 years ago. And I received thousands of death threats. I did thousands upon thousands of radio interviews under my name. And yet in all that time, I never ducked. Never once flinched. And I had times where there was large arenas that had been arranged for international simulcasts where I was debating Muslim clerics, and there were bomb threats, and a lot of people left the auditoriums after the bomb threats. I stayed right there and said, "Nah, I'm just going to go ahead and do this program like we intended to do it." And so he said, "Well, that's brave of you." No, it's not. If Yahweh is going to protect you, no courage required.
Yeah.
So the defiant and insane nature of Israel going forward is macabre, and it's particularly troublesome knowing that there's going to be another massacre, a tsunami of Mujahideen as a result of the tidal wave of anti-Semitism that has flooded the world. Most Jews, rather than embracing Yahweh, have doubled down against him, becoming ever more entrenched and divisive and immoral, progressive politics and parasitic, suicidal Orthodox Judaism. It's interesting, too, that I have written 2 essays in the last 2 days. One on the parasitic nature of Judaism, and particularly of the Haredim, being so detrimental to the life of Israel, and another showing the house divided of progressive Jews tearing their own country apart. And I haven't had a single Yehud, who is one of the Xers that has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers, not a single one of the voices standing up for Israel has said, "You're right. You're right." They won't say it. They're afraid of it. They won't actually condemn Islam, and they refrain from saying much more than Hamas bad. They won't refrain from using Palestinian, even though that's deadly to them. They won't embrace anything you say about Dode. They as the Messiah, Son of God. They won't even chime in when you expose that Christianity is wrong and that there was no Jesus, and therefore that whole mythology was created to rob them of their actual Messiah. And there's no embracing of Twistianity or goddamn religion. It's even when you post and respond to the most outspoken of those Israelites defending Israel, no reaction from them. If you speak in generalities, they'll all acknowledge what you said and repost it. But if you are specific about the consequence of erasing Yahweh's name, about negating the attributes and achievements of the Son of God and Messiah Dode, the actual nature of the enemy and Islam, the anti-Semitism and degradation of Jews perpetrated by Christianity in the New Testament, the parasitic nature of the Haredim, and the divisive nature of progressive Jews, flatline. That's why God said, I'm going to send my goy after him, because that guy, he just doesn't give up. He'll keep going. Okay, thanks, God.
Send in the bowl.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Well,
why.
Well, I appreciate you.
Now we know why he chose the bull as the metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Bulls don't give up, do they?
No.
No, plow ahead.
If you piss off a bull, what happens?
Yeah. Find the fence.
Yeah. Yep. That's why he picked the bull. Well, nonetheless, Jews have doubled down against Yahweh, his son, his Torah, his covenant, his Moed Mikre, and his evidence. I mean, God said, I want you to write goddamn religion to save my people from Islam and Twistianity, to reveal the truth so that they can actually accept my son as their Messiah. But man, that's a tough crowd. I will tell you, though, that before the sun rises tomorrow morning, you can be assured I'll be right back at it, undeterred, backbone, as bullish as ever. That is the job. In fact, I was just reading something that Dode wrote about me in the 14th Mashal, and he says specifically of Yada that he is exceedingly well prepared to deal with the hostility of rebellion and antagonism and embitterness that is pervasive. That the guy, among all of the people Yahweh's worked with, he is unique, and that he has the resolve to expose it and to condemn it and respond to it effectively. And it was actually, when I read this, I said, if I were to compare myself to the two great Zeroah, Moshe and Dode, there's only one place where I think that I might have more gumption than they did, because tenacity against embittered rebellion. Mm-hmm. When there was embittered rebellion, what did Moshe do every time?
Run back into the tent.
Run back into the tent, did a face plant, and one time even said, God, how dare you do this to me?
Right.
But that's what he did.
Yeah.
When his son rebelled against him, what did Dode do?
He
ran away
and cried.
Yeah. Oh, when Saul turned against him, what did he do? He ran away and cowered.
Yeah.
When people come against me,
you
never duck.
Right.
You renew my confidence. You are going to see the horns. Better get out of the way, because it's the nature of a bull. you try to get in the way of me and the job that Yahweh has asked me to do, and I would run over my own mother. And that's just all there is to it. There is a 0% chance, fellas, that at the end of this project, that Yahweh is going to come to me and say, it could have been a lot better if you'd only stayed the course. If you'd only shown some courage and stood up to them when I needed you to be there, then it would have turned out better. And he might have 1,000 things that he says, you could have done this smarter or figured that out sooner or been more polished as in your presentation of such and such.
Mm-hmm.
But he is for sure never going to criticize my resolve.
Effort. No.
Both in effort and being unflinching, unwavering. And I think God likes unwavering.
That comes with being Sadak. I mean, if you're right, you don't waver, so that's what,
correct. I'm with you on that. I think God has so many words for steadfast.
Mm-hmm.
Steadfast, loyal, reliable, dependable. And because he manifests those traits,
Mm-hmm.
he likes to see those traits in those who represent him.
Yeah.
And, none of us can have all of the attributes that would make us the ideal witness or prophet or defender of God's people. But we all can have those attributes that are most needed for our particular mission at this particular time. And I think in this case, when I read what Dode is writing, that there are two things that were particularly necessary, because we're kidding Yahweh, but kidding him on the square here. He said, I can't take these people anymore. I'm going away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not coming back until my
restoring
witness encourages them to be observant about the benefits of the covenant. So he's really put us right there in harm's way in the midst of the battle. But that 14th Mashal says that there are some aspects of this individual. One, he is a damn bull. And that metaphor comes with a lot of attributes that are appropriate for this time. Bulls are never called cowardly. You never walk up to a bull and say, "You coward."
Mm-hmm.
You would never charge ahead.
Say it once.
Yeah. And the others that he mentions, and the single most common mention is chakma, 4 times. And chakma is ability to process information strategically such that you're able to deduce insights and conclusions from the evidence. And that is probably my number one gift. That's the thing that I think I have done even better than Moshe and perhaps better than Dode. So chakma, and it could be that God cheated and gave me the chakma that, he clearly did. He said that you've got the spirit of chakma. And so he may have just caused it to be that way. But, I wasn't an idiot before he infused me with the spirit. So maybe he found somebody that had, from a human perspective, chakma. And so he says, that's a processor that runs at the speed that I need. Now, I will, I'll give it a little more zip.
Give it a little booster.
Yeah, give it a little booster. So chakma was one of them. And this other is this ability to stand steadfast and be able to appreciate when embitterness is getting in the way, when there is recalcitrance, when there is rebellion, and knowing how to respond to it.
Yeah.
And there's only really one effective technique. I hope there's only the technique. It's a technique I'm using, and I think it's the technique that will prevail.
Okay.
It's a technique that Yahweh used, so I think I'm on solid ground. And that is when people are as rebellious and as embittered and as stubborn as the children of Israel and full of themselves, there's only one way that you'll ultimately get to them. And that is you pound them and pound them and pound them. You keep on coming after them. You never flinch. You never look away. You marshal all of the evidence that can be brought to the occasion. You convey all of the credentials that God has provided. You systematically refute their positions, and you keep on coming at them with a truth that will ultimately resonate with them. It is a relentless pursuit of the truth and never flinching from it. And realizing that, yeah, they may be a rock wall, but there's never been a rock wall that has ever stood the test of time. Given enough time, we'll knock down this damn wall.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do more than poke a hole in it. We're going to knock down that damn wall. And I think it's that persistence. And it's not a quiet persistence. This is not a meek persistence. I don't think Jews have ever respected meek. I'm not even sure God's ever respected meek, to tell you the truth. I think it's why he uses Gabor of those he respects. Bold, fierce, combative. This is Yahweh's approach. So that is what we're doing, and we're going to continue to do. So, and it needs to be done because
Okay.
Muslims
Good
are
to go.
going to come back at Israel. I read all the time that Jews think that they won in this war against Hamas, and they just want Hamas to give up, surrender, and admit they lost. And my response is no. They're not going to surrender. From their perspective, they did not lose. What they proved is that Israel is susceptible to the kind of attack that they launched. That while Israel has a field day against airplanes and tanks and armies, that it was completely paralyzed when it came to civilian Muslims with garden tools. And that was only a few thousand of them. And so all they've done is that they've proven that with 300,000 of them, as opposed to 3,000 of them or 4,000 of them, that they will be a force that Israel cannot stop and that Israel has no means to thwart them. So they know how to attack Israel. That's what they've learned. And they've learned that Israel has no defense anywhere in the world. And they know that they're going to prevail with the state of Islamic terror. That a Fakistanian state is going to be imposed on Israel, and they know it. That is why they continue to be so belligerent. They're forcing the world into it because the cowardly libertards, who all they have is hateful rhetoric, they're going to say that the solution to all of this problem is to give the terrorists a state of their own, and it'll be carved right out of Israel. And so next time, rather than having 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 Muslims on foot coming from one direction through a wall, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of them coming from all directions and also from the inside out. That's what's coming to Israel. Responding effectively to goddamn religion and then reading and responding to Yada Yahowah would preclude it. But they aren't going to do that. So it's going to happen. And Israel's going to have its back to the wall with no one to defend it. Everyone will have abandoned Israel. And when that happens, God's saying they will finally listen. Now, my strong preference is to say, well, he says they are going to listen then. He didn't say they aren't going to listen before then.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, if we were a bit defeatist, we would say, well, let's stack up the information that they need to hear, and we'll just let it hang there. And when they finally get their backs against the wall, they'll listen to it and respond then.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the right approach. I think the right approach is you keep hammering away, and that little by little, there will be those who understand, who respond, who embrace the covenant. When we're seeing that, there are thousands of people now who are drawn to Yahowah. And so I think that it is a process, not an end result. So we are dealing, though, with the time that the torment of God's people, the treatment of God's people, is going to be worse than any race has ever endured in the long annals of human atrocities. And the suffering and the horrors will be worse than the European Holocaust in the shadow of the Holy Roman Empire and its church.
Mm.
And while the nation will be devastated, a remnant will be spared, not once, but 3 times over the ensuing decade. On 10/7/23 through 10/7/33 is the decade that we're talking about, because Sukkah begins on 10/7/33. And there will be a substantial harvest of prominent and mature grain on Shabbat, transpiring 7 years before Yahweh's return with Dode on the Shabbat of May 22nd at sunset in 2026, as the time of Jacob's troubles begins in earnest. I had somebody write me today who's been studying for a while and has read most of this Qatsyr harvest book, and said, what's your take on how this thing is going to play out, what's going to happen with our bodies? So would you like to answer that, guys, or would you like me to give my answer?
I'd rather hear yours. Huh?
Mine is that I'm focused on when it's going to occur.
Yeah. No word.
I want to know why it is occurring that way. I want to know how to capitalize upon it and to encourage as many people as possible to participate in it. I want to convey that it is an outgrowth from Dode's fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, and it is God's opportunity to enrich and empower us. I want to correctly time it with 7 years prior to Dode's return with Yahowah. I want to accept responsibility for it, to do my part to cultivate that harvest. But as for my body, I do not care. A body is a tremendous liability going forward. It has no function whatsoever. Outside of 3 dimensions, a body is useless. You can't have a body in 2 dimensions. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't have a body in 4 dimensions. So we're in the only dimension that you can actually have a body, and even here it decays.
Mm-hmm. Trust me, at 74, it don't work good.
No. And so the bottom line is, if our bodies are discarded or they're incinerated or they can't come with us, I don't care.
Just disintegrate.
Somebody says, wouldn't you want your body buried? You don't want to desecrate?
I don't care.
No, I don't care. I just listen. Yahweh's got who knows how many billion malak, however many he needs, and if he thinks the incineration of our physical bodies is a cleaner way to deal with all this, then that's what he's going to do. If he thinks that the remainder of a lifeless body is going to convey a more effective message for his people, then that's what he's going to do. I can tell you, I am never going to want that body again.
No.
Yeah.
I understand E equals MC squared. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the formula. I'm not
On a level.
Einstein, but I understand E equals MC squared.
Yeah.
And so I know that we're going to become E, energy based. And I know that energy is a big, powerful difference between it and matter, although energy equals matter, but it equals matter times the square of the
Yeah.
speed of light.
Yeah, which is a lot.
Therefore, at light speed, I know that I'm going to be able to take some of my big E and convert it into little m at any time. And I am not going to do it back like this. There's going to be a bigger, better me. And you might say, Vane, what are you going to do? You know, but yes, I'm going to have
All right.
I'm going to
Upgrade.
Listen, I'm going to push the bigger, better me all the way to the point of not so that my wife, I still want to recognize the new me, because I'd like my wife to like and love the new me. So I'm going to be a little careful on some of the improvements. But yeah, my existing body, no.
Yeah.
No. You guys may want to come back exactly the same, but
no, sir. No.
No. Leah says she's coming back like 6'4" or something, aren't you?
Oh, wow.
Well, which means I'm going to have to be like at least 6'6"
right
to keep up, and maybe even 6'8" if she wears heels. So
yeah, there you go. Good thinking.
Yeah.
Good thinking.
Yeah. So
she plays a mean horn, by the way.
She does.
Yeah.
I tell you what, you never want to compete with a Jewish.
No, I liked it. Well done.
Blowing the shofar. And I've tried. No.
You tried to put that when I was there. It was not good.
I do not want to compete with her. She can blow that horn. There's no question about it. Okay, we're going to go past that now. And where were we? Well, the nation will be, pardon? The nation is going to be devastated. We know that.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. But a remnant is going to be spared. Even Wookiee says, "Oh, come on, Dad. What are you doing?" My buddy Wookiee here is still wearing his fancy outfit. There is going to be a remnant left and that remnant on September 24th will be, because they will have a gleaning on the September 23rd. On the 24th, at the end of Jacob's troubles, we're going to have a protected remnant, and they're going to see the greatest show on earth. I mean, I think it's going to be the greatest show ever on earth. I was talking to Leah, because occasionally Leah gets kind of saddened by the notion that I'm going to be beat to a pulp by Satan. It's not her favorite vision. And she says, I'm going to go pop Satan in the nose. Probably will. Probably will. But I keep on laughing. It says, no, this is so different than what Dode endured. First of all, Dode endured Passover alone. And he was treated to the single cruelest torture in the history of humankind.
Double whammy.
And Christianity. And he knew that for the next 2,000 years, his people would ignore what he had achieved.
Even worse, yeah.
A triple whammy. And the quadruple whammy is then the next day, he carried our guilt into Sheol. And so he's the only person who's actually experienced Sheol and did it for us. So Dode, and then he had to endure the 2,000 years of his people rejecting him and ignoring what he had done for them. My situation is so much easier. I get beaten up pretty badly by Satan, but the fact of the matter is that there's this huge audience And that means that everybody that was harvested on Shabbat is going to be there. Everyone's harvested on Towrah is going to be there. The entire remnant of the children of Israel are going to be there. And guess what else? Yahowah's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I get Elia to orchestrate. I mean, I didn't even want a funeral. I've told everybody, if I, before I knew this was going to happen, I just said, listen, if I pass away, please put me, I don't care if I'm cremated. I don't care if I put me in a pine box. I really don't care. But I do care, no funeral. And now I'm going to have the ultimate funeral. It's going to be orchestrated by Elia.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this funeral pyre is going to be ignited by God himself, who is going to release this torrent of water underneath it, this great spectacle of dancing waters that are pour off the Temple Mount, as Elia explains what's happening. And the result is literally going to save the children of Israel. And so I'm looking at this and saying, this is the best deal ever. What a way to go. So, yeah, it's really going to be a marvelous thing. And I think I've shared with you before, it's the only time that I've actually seen a prophetic revelation.
Mm-hmm.
I've witnessed the entire thing, exactly where it transpires, how it happens. And what's interesting is that after seeing the whole thing, now as I go through various prophecies, I find Yahowah confirming what he showed me.
Mm-hmm.
It's really an interesting thing. And again, we're talking a lot about this role that Yahowah has asked me to play in this, but we're talking about Shabbat and Towrah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the entire purpose of this role that Yahowah has asked me to play. Without me doing this on behalf of his people, there is no Shabbat and Towrah, so it wouldn't even bother me talking about them. No one would even know what they meant, much less when they were going to transpire or capitalize upon them. So if you're, and I don't think we have anyone that's listening to our program that would be uncomfortable with us talking about the role I'm playing, because they're aware of it. They're excited about it. We're all excited about it. That's why we're here. We're just going to get Israel to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the end to the time of Jacob's troubles. It's the time when the covenant family are going to return with Yahowah to witness this great event, to be part of this great event. I'm in my mind's eye, I have heard Yahowah's voice during this great explosion of fire and water. While Elia is orchestrating, is the master of ceremonies, and he is reprising what he did 40 Babel 888 years ago when he exposed and condemned religion and politics in Israel. There is a moment where Yahowah's booming voice speaks to his people. It's sort of like going back in time to the Exodus, where Yahowah's booming voice and brilliant fire, and he told the children of Israel, "This is my guy. I'm speaking through him to you." And in this case, this is my guy. I spoke through him to you. Mm-hmm. Giving enormous credence to what's going on, because this is the last chance that the remnant of Israel have. And so during this final celebration and harvest, represented by chittahim and the Shabbat version, which are wheats in the plural form, this is the pronouncement that will soon occur. And of course, everyone who is represented by the mature and standing grain is going to return for the next harvest, which is then of olives. And therefore, it's of Israelites. Now, that does not mean that the standing grain is of primarily of Goyim. I don't think it is. I think it will include some Goyim, But the two loaves that come out, they're coming out of Yisrael, or the homes of Yisrael.
Mhm.
And when you're talking about two and Yisrael, it's always Yisrael and Yehudim. So I think they are the majority. And Bikurim is a firstborn children harvest, which would be mostly Yehudim and Yisraelites. I think Shabu is mostly Yisraelites and Yehudim, but there will be Goyim. There are those who have sojourned with God's people that are included in that guest list. And as we know, there's 8 individuals that return to support the ongoing work of Yahowah so that he can return. Now, we know that Shabuah, the first phase of it, is an olive harvest. It is a gleaning, a lakat, and that this reaping will transpire on Towrah, and then on the solar eclipse on the Shabbat beginning September 24th, there will be the final sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. Then 10 days later, Yahweh and Dod will return to reconcile the relationship with the final remnant of Yisraelites on Yom Kippurim, 6:22 p.m. as the sun sets in Jerusalem in the Yobel year of 6,000 Yah, October 2nd, 2033. 5 days thereafter, during a lunar eclipse, Sukkah is going to be celebrated as the covenant family camps out with father and son under the exact same conditions that existed in Eden, which means we're coming full circle. It's such a marvelous story, and
Yeah.
this is what we're here to share. This is what we've learned. This is the timing. And for anyone listening to us tonight, particularly if you are a Yisraelite, an Israelite, particularly if you are a Yehud Jew, and you're hearing, well, 2033, that's still what? 8 years from now, I got plenty of time. No, you don't.
And these conditions.
No, you don't. First of all, that would be enormously selfish. And at this time when Israel is fighting for its very existence, Jews for their right to exist, why would you be selfish? If you can join with us, come to know God, and protect God's people, cause more Israelites to become part of the covenant family, and you don't do it, that says you're exceedingly selfish. So don't postpone it. Second of all, why would you want to postpone the best thing that could possibly happen to you?
Yeah.
I mean, Yahweh's brilliant. He's generous.
It's fun.
Yeah.
This is the best job in the world. You know, I told you that before the sun rises tomorrow, I will be back at it. It's not drudgery.
Mm-mm.
I can't wait for the sun to come back up and get back at it. You know, every day is a thrill. And to be sitting there today and to read the prophecy in the 14th Mashal, and to see how God provided a prophecy 3,000 years ago to speak to us right in the heart today. But what's so amazingly exciting, I mean, when I shared it with Leah, she said, how does that make you feel? And I kept on saying, well, you had all this that I wanted to share about how it made me feel, which was, how come I missed it the first time through? Look how long it took me to get at it. One of the things I even said was, now I understand. When I asked Yahweh the morning after the rebellion, and I asked him, so how do you want me to respond to this? And there was this hesitation initially where God said, I've already answered that question for you. And then he went and pointed me in the right direction. But the reason he said, I've already answered that question for you, and that, maybe you should have known, is right there. When I first learned about the Towrah, the answer is right there. And it points directly to the Numbers 12 passage and about the meltdown with Miriam, and then to the Numbers 20 presentation of the waters of Meribah. And so when you read something like that, it pierces you in the heart, but not in a negative way, in a stimulating, joyous way. To know that God cared enough about our relationship that he would offer this kind of affirmation, and would have the confidence that, given time, we'd figure it out and get to celebrate it with him, that it's been there all that time. My primary reaction to it is love.
Mm-hmm.
That God cared enough about what we're doing for his people and the intervention that we're providing. He loved us enough to provide this kind of a detailed affirmation of, I knew this was going to happen, and I knew you'd be prepared to handle it. And here's the answer. So it is a great joy to be able to do this, and it's also a great joy to know that we were the first ones to actually figure out this entire timeline of when these events were going to transpire, and we're the first to recognize that we're going from the joyous conditions found in Gan Eden 6,000 years ago, and God's bringing us right back to that, except now with a bigger cast of characters and with a bigger garden. It's now the entire earth, and will eventually be the entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
Will be our garden to explore, and how emancipating and enriching and empowering that really is. And of course, it all starts by going through that first doorway, the doorway we will celebrate next week, Pesach Passover. It's the doorway to life, the doorway to God's home. But to pass through that doorway, we have to be perfected. And that requires God to remove our guilt. And he did so by allowing his son to carry it into Sheol. And what a marvelous way to go about this, because it leaves every aspect of us except our guilt.
Mm-hmm.
So we can come to Yahweh with our personality, with our aptitudes, with our attitudes, with our experiences. We can come fully loaded with who we are, which makes us unique and interesting and distinct. And all we're missing is our guilt.
Right.
Bill.
Oh, what an ingenious way to go about this process. And as a result, he says, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to adopt you.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be my kids. You become royalty. If you're the son of a Jew, you're a Jew, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a son of God, what are you?
Godlike.
Godlike, right? That's why Yahweh says of his firstborn, Dod, that Dod is in fact Elyon, like God in his presence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wookiee is convinced that there is a rival dog that is dressed just like him, and that monitor that he is going to sniff out and find. And he is not. Oh, I'm going to go over here and read the book that my dad wrote. That one's good too. Yeah, well, go on. Yeah, Wookiee is quite industrious this evening. I'm not surprised he's not woofing at us. We get to walk through that doorway of Passover a week from today. We get to cross through that threshold of perfection and enter Yahweh's home as his beloved sons and daughters, enriched and empowered by him on matzah and bakurim, so that we are now prepared for the ultimate ride of a lifetime on Shabuah,
Mm-hmm.
which is the next Moed Mikre that we are going to fulfill. So that is God's story, and he's sticking with it. And
Good.
We are committed to it, and can't wait to share the next chapter with you as we return. There we go. Yeah, so Wookie says to, what are we turning to, Dad? Passover. You want to do Passover next week? You betcha I want to do Passover next week. All right. Well, fellas, happy Shabbat. I look forward to sharing a Pesach dinner with you this time next week, even though, as Kevin says, there are lots of shows on cooking, no shows on eating.
We can start a trend.
Well, we can start a trend. You know, you could say the same thing. There's lots of shows on religious gods. There had never been
one on the real one.
Never one on Yahowah.
Right,
so,
right.
Oh, I think we're in good company, being unique. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I was really fond of this idea of Kodesh being
Yes.
set apart, and everything's got to be
like
Kodesh. So we are going to be as Kodesh as possible. And my hope is that we'll soon be able to pursue the continuation of what started as the series on the Choder, and then migrated into the series on the man from Edom.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go forward from that, it's really an expression of all of the terms that Yahweh used. And so I don't want to just continue it as the Choder or man from Edom, because it embraces all of them as we go through the two witnesses that are in Zechariah 4. Mm-hmm. That takes us, because of the statements that are made, into the presentation of the Choder and the Mashal 14, which then will bring us back to the conclusion of Zechariah 4. We'll go into Zechariah 5 and into 6. And then we really have a more comprehensive portrait of the prophetic purpose and witness of this individual by many names, but a singular purpose. Mm-hmm. So we got to come up with a name, and I'm a little bit concerned that when I wrote them all down, we would be a third of the way into the show by the time we finish the title. And Leah's over there on her little laptop as she types in the show titles, and I'll have to have her come in about 15 minutes before showtime.
Oh, sure time.
If we have all of them. Leah's favorite is just to say, okay, he is the Zikaron, because Leah wrote a song, and I think mistook Zeroah for Zikaron in it, and I didn't have the heart to tell her, no, it's really just Zeroah, because it was very early on in the process. But I said, you can stay with Zechariah, because if you really look at the full meaning of the word, it means it's a memorable man.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
It's a man that helps us remember, because Zachar is a man, and Zachar as the verb is to remember. So it's a man that helps us remember, and it's a memorable man. And so she says, then let's just go with Zachar. It makes her song work, and then she says, you know what God always says about listening to what your wife says. There we are. All right, fellas. I'm looking forward to Passover this time next week with you.
Good time,
Me too.
Nice having this romp through Hosha, even though God wasn't so happy with his people. But he has a solution. He's sending his restoring witness to help his people become observant before his return. So we thank him for that, and for this opportunity, and for the results that he's going to deliver on behalf of his people, so that there's a wonderful celebration and homecoming on Yom Kippurim. Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen.
Thank you all for listening.
Pleasure.
Good night. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.